So we're diving into a deep dive that I think is going to be really fascinating.
Yeah.
All about men's rights activism.
Yeah.
Especially, when it comes to the red pill philosophy and how it plays out, in a marriage.
Absolutely.
So we've got Sooth and sermons for men's rights activists to unpack here.
Yes.
And just from kind of glancing through it, it seems like it's really a journey into reclaiming like masculine identity in today's world. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
This book is really all about recognizing the challenges that men face in today's society. And not only that, but equipping them with the tools to navigate these challenges, to face them head on and come out stronger on the other side.
It seems like it touches on like everything, from like that red pill awakening, to the whole idea of a feminist agenda that's out there.
Right.
And even like some very practical advice on like, managing anger, finding strength through stoicism, and then even like delving into historical parallels and what the book calls the red pill hero's journey.
Yes.
Which I think is a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
But from what I saw, it doesn't shy away from controversy. It really
No, it doesn't.
directly addresses, how feminism is perceived by men today.
Yeah.
Especially, like I said, within marriage and the legal system.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting because I think a lot of men feel like the deck is stacked against them.
Yeah.
And this book really speaks to that, so it's a powerful read for a lot of guys out there.
So let's break down this whole red pill awakening that the book starts off with.
Yeah.
It describes it as like this moment of realization. Like all of a sudden you're seeing societal structures and narratives, in a way that you didn't before.
You realize that the game's been rigged the whole time.
Yeah, like you're playing with rig rule. That's a great way to put
I
it.
never even knew it. And that can be a really, really jarring experience.
Right. It's like all of a sudden the veil's been lifted.
It is.
But the interesting thing is, the book doesn't present this as some kind of like hopeless, bleak situation.
No, not at all.
It's more like this is a call to action.
It's about saying, okay, now that you say how the game is played, how are you going to play it? How are you going to win?
Yeah. How are you gonna play it strategically? So it's not about being a victim, but about understanding the game and then figuring out how to play it, like you said, strategically.
Exactly. It's about taking control.
To your advantage.
Yeah.
And it gets really specific about what it calls, the feminist agenda.
It does.
And how that agenda is perceived to have impacted men today.
Right.
And the book uses examples like, the divorce rate.
Right.
Family courts, and even what it calls female supremacism. Which is obviously a loaded term. But, to illustrate its point.
And this is where I think the book really hits home for a lot of men, because it's talking about those personal experiences, those really painful experiences.
Especially, what we're talking about, guys, in the married red pill community.
Yeah,
right.
right.
So a lot of these guys are going through divorces or custody battles.
Exactly. And they're seeing firsthand how the system can work against them.
And so the book is saying, like, hey, these are some of the reasons why you're going through what you're going through.
It's giving them a framework to understand their experience.
Right. And it kind of goes hand in hand with this idea of covert contract,
Absolutely.
which is, something we've talked about before. But these are like the unwritten rules.
The unspoken agreements.
Yeah. In a marriage.
That often work to the detriment of men.
Right. And how those play out, especially, in the legal system, which, as we just said, is perceived by many men to be biased.
Yeah, and it can be really eye-opening to start recognizing those covert contracts.
Yeah.
And to understand how they might be used against you.
Yeah. And so the book is saying, be aware of these dynamics.
Be proactive.
Yeah.
Protect yourself.
Especially when it comes to things like, divorce and custody battles.
Right.
The book doesn't shy away from this anger that a lot of men feel.
No.
When they experience this red pill awakening, it even says, embrace your anger.
Use it.
Yeah.
A powerful force.
But it really emphasizes channeling it constructively, right?
Absolutely. It's not about lashing out or becoming bitter. It's about taking that anger and using it as fuel to improve yourself, to fight for what you believe in.
So it's about taking that energy, that anger, and turning it into, some kind of action.
Action, yeah. Self-improvement, change,
Yeah.
making a difference.
Yeah. And this is where the book brings in stoicism.
Yeah, it's a perfect philosophy for this.
Right.
It's about self-control, reason.
Yeah. And like accepting what you can't change.
Yeah. Right.
Focusing on what you can control.
Right.
Your reactions, your choices.
And so it's like, okay, you're faced with, maybe a legal system that you perceive as unfair, or just in general, a society that you perceive as gynocentric.
Right.
How do you navigate that without losing yourself?
Exactly. Stoicism gives you the tools to stay calm, to think rationally, and to make good decisions even when you're under pressure.
Yeah.
Because, when you're dealing with these kinds of situations, it's easy to let your emotions get the best of you.
Oh, absolutely.
But Stoicism can help you stay grounded.
Yeah, keep a cool head,
Exactly.
And it's really about finding that
The inner strength.
Yeah, and resilient,
Yeah.
that Stoicism can provide.
About becoming unbreakable,
Yeah.
no matter what life throws at you.
The book also talks a lot about finding support in male camaraderie.
Yeah, the importance of brotherhood.
Yeah.
Can't underestimate that.
Finding your tribe, Right. The guys who get it.
Guys who get it,
Who've been through similar experiences.
who understand,
Exactly.
the red pill journey.
You need that support system.
Yeah, because it can be lonely, right?
Very lonely.
Yeah. And it even gives, some practical advice on where to find these guys.
Yeah, get out there in the real world.
It suggests, gyms,
Right.
martial arts club,
Yeah, shared activities like that.
where men naturally connect.
Yeah, where you're having shared experiences.
Yeah, exactly. Building those bonds.
Yeah. So it's not just venting online.
No.
It's about really building those connections.
Real world connection.
Face to face.
In-person connection.
That's where the real strength comes from.
Yeah. And this is where I think things get really, really interesting.
Yeah. The historical parallel.
Right.
I love this part.
The book starts talking about modern men, and it compares them to figures like, the samurai.
The warrior class.
Yeah. And it uses the Bushido
The
code.
code of honor.
Yeah, as a framework for understanding, masculine values.
It's timeless wisdom.
Yeah, and how those values can be applied to the challenges that men face today.
It's about tapping into that ancient strength.
I've always been fascinated by the Bushido code. What are some of those connections that the book draws between those values,
Yeah.
from ancient warriors and the struggles that guys are going through today?
Well, it talks about virtues like righteousness, courage, benevolence, respect,
Yeah.
honor, loyalty, self-control.
Right.
These are qualities that have always been essential for men.
Yeah.
And they're just as important today, maybe even more so.
So it's like, we can learn from these men of the past,
Absolutely.
and apply those lessons to today's world.
They face challenges, we face challenges.
Yeah.
The principles are the same.
The principles are the same. The principles are the same.
That's a great way to put it. And then it introduces this concept of the red pill hero's journey.
Yeah, this is a powerful idea.
Right. Which, I think is a fascinating take on the classic hero's journey archetype.
It is.
The hero's journey that we see in myths and stories.
Right, across culture, throughout time. It's a universal story.
Yeah. So what's the connection? How does that hero's journey play out in the red pill?
Well, it's about seeing your own journey, your own struggles, your own growth through the lens of that classic narrative.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that you're not just going through a bunch of random events. There's a pattern here.
Yeah, there's a purpose.
There's a purpose.
Yeah.
And there's a potential for transformation.
So it's really about finding meaning, finding that purpose in the challenges.
Exact. Turning your pain into power.
Yeah, seeing the challenges as opportunities for growth.
Yeah. And to ultimately become a stronger, more empowered man.
That's the goal.
And the book really kind of breaks it down into these different stages,
Yeah.
from the red pill awakening
Yes.
to all these challenges and triumphs that lead to that personal transformation.
It's a roadmap for the journey.
And how does this red pill hero's journey relate to the listener's own life?
I think it gives them a framework to understand their own experiences.
Especially, within the context of marriage.
It helps them see the bigger picture. Their struggles aren't just random events. They're part of a larger story.
And a larger story of growth.
Growth, transformation, and ultimately triumph.
So it's not just about, fixing your marriage or whatever problem you're going through. It's about becoming a better man.
Exactly. The red pill hero's journey is about becoming the best version of yourself.
Now, the book gets into some pretty practical stuff, too, like navigating the legal system.
Yeah, especially family courts.
Which it sees as being biased against men.
And let's be honest, it often is.
Yeah. So it's really about being informed, right?
Absolute. Knowledge is power.
Being prepared.
Being proactive.
And really knowing how to advocate for yourself.
Exactly. Because you can't just rely on the system to be fair.
Right.
You have to be your own advocate.
Yeah, which is really important, especially when you feel like the system's working against you.
Exactly. Don't be a victim.
Don't be a victim. Take control.
Take control.
And this is where that whole idea of covert contracts comes back in, right?
It does.
Because if you don't know the rules of the game, you're going to get played.
Exactly. You got to know what you're dealing with.
You got to know what you're dealing with. So the book is saying, understand legal procedure.
Yeah.
Be aware of resources that are out there specifically designed for men's rights.
There's a lot of good information out there.
And then it even talks about, potentially representing yourself in court.
Sometimes that's the best option.
Right. Which is obviously a big decision to make.
It is, but it's important to know that it's a possibility.
Right, that it's out there.
And it's not as scary as it sounds.
Okay. So knowledge is power when it comes to that.
Absolutely. The more you know, the better equipped you are to fight for your rights.
Okay. And then it talks a lot about psychological resilience.
Yeah. That's crucial.
Which makes sense,
Well,
right? Given, all the challenges that we're talking about.
You got to be mentally strong to navigate all this.
So it's about, managing feelings of powerlessness,
Right.
which I think a lot of guys in this situation feel.
It's a common feeling.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to control you,
It doesn't have to control you. Finding strength in community.
which is why that brotherhood is so important.
Right, which is why that's so important.
Yeah.
And practicing self-care.
Yeah. Taking care of yourself,
Yeah.
mentally, physically, emotionally.
Yeah, and it really frames these things as tools, for navigating this world that can often feel hostile,
Right.
unfair.
You're going to face adversity.
Yeah.
The question is, how are you going to handle it?
How are you going to handle
Are
it?
you going to crumble or are you going to rise above it?
And this seems especially relevant, for someone who's looking to improve their marriage.
Yeah, because relationships are tough.
Right.
And if you don't have that resilience, you're going to get crushed.
You're going to get crushed.
Yeah.
So it's about building that inner strength, that resilience.
Exactly.
Navigate not just, the world at large,
Right.
but also those challenges, those inevitable challenges that come up in any relationship.
Absolutely. Because let's be real, no marriage is perfect.
No marriage is perfect.
There's going to be conflict, there's going to be disagreements.
Yeah.
But if you have that resilience, you can work through those challenges and come out stronger on the other side.
One of the more, I guess, bold claims that the book makes is that men need to develop strategies for what it calls overcoming the feminist state.
Yeah, that's a big one,
Right.
but it's an important one.
Which it sees as this system that's really designed to disadvantage men.
And there's a lot of truth to that. You look at the laws, the policies, the cultural narratives, it's all slanted against men in many ways.
So it's not just about individual experiences. It's about recognizing a larger, like a systemic
problem.
issue.
Yeah.
That affects men.
Yeah, it's not just you, it's the system itself.
On a broader scale.
Exactly.
And the book gives, some examples
Yeah.
of actions that men can take, like, legal challenges.
Right.
Being involved in men's rights activism.
Yeah, making your voice heard.
Yeah. And even, countering that agenda in their own lives.
Right, it's about taking action.
Yeah, making those changes. So it's not just understanding the problem.
It's about doing something about it.
It's about doing something about it.
Yeah.
Taking control.
Which really, I think, ties back into that whole, emphasis on self-improvement.
Absolutely.
Personal responsibility.
It all goes hand in hand.
Yeah. The book is saying, like, hey, you have the power to make these changes both in your own life
Right.
and in the world around you.
And in the world around you, you're not powerless. You have agency.
Yeah.
Use it.
Yeah, it's about that empowerment.
Exactly.
Really taking control of your life and making those changes that you want to see.
That's what the Red Pill is all about.
That's what the Red Pill is all about.
Yeah.
Empowering men.
And I think that's a great place to kind of wrap up this first part of our deep dive into Sooth and sermons for men's rights activists.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, but there's still much more to explore.
There's so much more to explore. But so far, I mean, it's clear that this book is really trying to provide men with a framework for understanding
A new way of seeing the world.
a new way of seeing the world, and really a call to action.
Absolutely. It's a wake-up call.
To step into their power.
And to create the life they want.
To create the life they want.
Not the life that society tells them they should have.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll delve even deeper into, some of the more, I guess, controversial and challenging aspects of this book.
You're looking forward to it.
So it's about that empowerment, taking control and making changes. And it's interesting how the book, connects that personal, that individual action with a larger kind of societal shift.
Yeah.
It's like saying that personal growth is intertwined with challenging,
Absolutely.
the status quo, the way things are.
You can't have one without the other. As men start to wake up and see the world for what it is, they naturally start to question the systems and the structures that are in place.
Yeah, and they want to make a change.
They want to make a change. They want to create a better world for themselves and for future generations.
So the book delves into some pretty deep psychological stuff too. Like it gets into Jungian psychology.
Oh, yeah.
And talks about, the concept of the animus and how that plays out in relationships.
Right, because we're not just talking about external forces here.
Right.
We're also talking about internal forces, the things that are going on inside of us.
That's psychology.
Psychology.
Yeah.
And Jungian psychology is really insightful when it comes to understanding men and women.
So for those who aren't familiar, I mean, what is this animus? How does that work?
Well, Jung describes the animus as the unconscious masculine element in a woman's psyche. And when this animus is negative or underdeveloped, it can create all sorts of problems in a relationship.
Okay, so give me an example.
Well, think about communication breakdowns, power struggles, conflict.
Right.
A lot of times those issues stem from the woman's animus. It's not always conscious.
Oh, so it's like sometimes a woman's reactions or behaviors might be influenced by these unconscious forces.
Exact. And it's not her fault.
Right.
It's just part of her psyche.
It's part of the psyche.
The key is to understand it.
Yeah.
So that you can navigate those situations more effectively.
Right. So as a man, understanding that this is going on can help you, maybe have a little more empathy.
Exactly. More understanding, more patience.
More patient. Yeah.
And ultimately a stronger relationship.
And I think this ties in really nicely to what we were talking about before with those covert contracts.
Oh, absolutely.
Because a lot of times those contracts are based on these unspoken expectations, right?
And those expectations are often driven by the unconscious.
Right.
So by understanding the animus, you can start to see those covert contracts more clearly.
Yeah, and you can start to maybe, renegotiate them or at least understand why they're there in the first place.
Exact. Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the book also encourages men to find strength in their faith and spirituality.
Yeah, because this journey can be tough.
Right.
You need something to hold on to, something to give you hope.
So it's not just about, like the political stuff or the social stuff. It's about finding something deeper.
Exactly. It's about connecting with something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. And what are some of the ways the book talks about doing that?
Well, it talks about prayer, meditation, spending time in nature, connecting with your higher power, whatever that may be.
So it's open to, whatever your beliefs are.
Absolutely. It's not about pushing any one religion or spiritual path. It's about encouraging men to find what works for them.
Okay. And also, the book explores some biblical stories. Like it mentions, the story of Job.
Oh, yeah. Job's a great example of resilience and faith in the face of adversity.
And then it also talks about the concept of putting on the full armor of God.
Right.
Like, as this metaphor for facing life's challenges.
Exactly. It's about being prepared for battle, not just physically, but spiritually as well.
Yeah.
Because there are forces out there that want to see you fail.
Right. And so, having that spiritual protection, that spiritual strength can help you, navigate those challenges.
It gives you a foundation to stand on, a sense of purpose, a reason to keep fighting.
So it's really about finding that inner strength.
Inner strength.
Yeah, that inner resilience. And it also, talks about forgiveness.
Yeah, forgiveness is huge.
Right.
It's not easy, but it's essential.
And it really frames it as a strength, not a weakness.
Exact. Because holding on to anger and resentment, that's what weakens you.
Right. And so it's about letting go of that.
Letting go of the past,
Yeah.
moving forward with a clean slate.
Okay. And how does that relate to the marriage aspect of all this?
Well, marriage is full of challenges.
Right.
There's going to be hurt feelings. There's going to be betrayals.
Yeah.
But if you want to save your marriage, you have to be willing to forgive.
Okay. So it's not about condoning, whatever happened, but it's about moving on from it.
It's about healing the wounds.
Yeah.
Rebuilding trust.
And creating that stronger foundation like we were talking about before.
Exact. Forgiveness is the key.
Now, let's get back to this idea of overcoming the feminist state.
Okay.
Which I think is a really, key theme in this book.
It's the core of the Redpill philosophy.
Yeah, it really is.
Understanding how feminism has impacted our society and how to push back against those negative influences.
So the book, kind of paints this picture of feminism as something that...
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It started with good intentions, fighting for equality, but it's gone too far.
Okay, so explain that a little bit more.
Well, the book argues that feminism has created a system that actually disadvantages men. Okay. In areas like family law, education, the workplace, you name it.
So it's not just about, individual women being, quote unquote feminist. It's about a larger system.
System of beliefs, laws, policies, cultural narratives, it's all intertwined.
Okay. And so the book is saying, like, men need to understand how this system works.
They need to see it for what it is.
Yeah.
And then they need to find ways to challenge it.
To push back against it.
Yeah.
And it gives some examples of how to do that. Legal challenges, political activism.
Right. Getting involved in the political process,
Yeah.
supporting men's rights organizations, making your voice heard.
And even just making, personal choices that align with your values.
Exactly. It's about living your life in a way that reflects your beliefs.
So it's about being proactive, taking control.
Absolutely. Don't just sit back and complain.
Right.
Get out there and make a difference.
Yeah. And I think this resonates really well with the idea of mending those covert contracts in a marriage.
Oh, absolutely. Because marriage is a microcosm of society.
Okay.
The same dynamics that are playing out in the world at large are also playing out in our relationships.
So the book is saying, if you want to have a successful marriage,
You have to be aware of those dynamics, and you have to be willing to challenge them.
and that might mean, being more assertive,
Yeah.
clearly communicating your needs,
Absolutely.
and being willing to renegotiate the terms of the relationship.
Because relationships are constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to adapt and change, the relationship will stagnate.
Right. It's about that growth.
Growth, yeah, both individually and as a couple.
Right.
And the red pill can be a powerful tool for that growth.
The book also, really, really pushes this idea of self-improvement.
Yeah. Becoming the best version of yourself.
Yeah. Like constantly striving to be better.
Physically, mentally,
And
emotionally.
it talks about the importance of, physical fitness, discipline,
Yeah.
self-control.
Right. Taking care of your body,
Yeah.
your mind, your spirit.
Developing that strong sense of purpose.
It's about becoming a man of action, a man of substance, a man who is capable of achieving great things.
So it's not just about, sitting around and complaining about how, society's unfair. It's about taking that energy and putting it into yourself.
Exact. Becoming the change you want to see in the world.
And this really ties back into the whole, hero's journey thing.
It does.
It's like it's about that process of becoming a better man.
It's a heroic quest.
Yeah, it really is.
Facing your demons, overcoming challenges, emerging stronger and wiser.
And the book really, really emphasizes that connection.
Yeah, it's a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
And it helps men to see their own struggles in a new light.
Okay. And it also gets into, some really interesting stuff about like yin and yang.
Oh, yeah. The balance of masculine and feminine energies.
Right. Drawing on Taoist philosophy.
Ancient wisdom.
Yeah. And so what's the connection there?
Well, the book argues that modern society has disrupted that balance.
Okay.
There's too much emphasis on feminine energy
Okay.
and not enough on masculine energy.
So it's about restoring that balance.
Bringing things back into harmony.
And how does that connect to, the red pill?
Well, the red pill is all about reclaiming masculinity,
Right.
restoring that balance,
Okay.
and creating a society where both men and women can thrive.
And this seems particularly relevant, for someone who's interested in the history of gender roles.
Oh, absolutely.
I know.
Because we've lost something along the way.
Yeah.
We've forgotten what it means to be a man.
Yeah. And so the book is kind of saying like, hey, let's look back.
Let's learn from the past.
Yeah. And see how things used to be.
And find a way to integrate those ancient wisdoms into our modern world.
Yeah.
Because they still have a lot to teach us.
Right. And then it makes this connection between this imbalance of energy, this kind of like overemphasis on the feminine to the rise of feminism.
Right. It's not that feminism is inherently bad.
Right.
But it's become a symptom of this imbalance.
So it's like it's a reaction to something that's already out of whack.
Exactly. And in some ways, it's made the problem worse.
So it's not about dismissing, the concerns that feminism has raised.
Oh, of course not.
But it's about recognizing that it's maybe gone too far.
It's swung the pendulum too far in the other direction.
Right. And it's created, these new imbalances.
Exactly.
And this seems really, really relevant for guys who are, in that married red pill community.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because they're seeing these dynamics play out in their own relationship.
Yeah, it's personal.
Yeah, it's very
It's
personal.
not just some abstract theory.
Right.
It's affecting their lives, their marriages, their family.
And so the book is kind of giving them a framework to understand that.
It's giving them the tools to fight back,
Yeah.
to restore that balance in their own lives,
To restore that balance.
and to create healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
And a big part of that, the book talks about is developing that self-worth.
Yeah, knowing your value
Yeah, like as a man,
as a man.
rejecting those negative narratives that society often puts on men.
Right. The toxic masculinity narrative,
Right.
the idea that men are inherently bad or oppressive.
Yeah, and instead, defining your own values.
Your own beliefs, your own standards.
Yeah, and really, really owning that.
Owning your masculinity.
Owning your masculinity.
Not being ashamed of it.
Right. And I think that's really important, especially for guys who are, navigating this red pill philosophy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because they're going to face a lot of criticism.
You're going to be called names.
Yeah. They're going to be told that they're wrong.
They're going to be attacked.
And so they need to have that strong foundation.
That inner strength.
Yeah.
That unshakable belief in themselves.
Right. To withstand that.
Yeah. To stand their ground.
Yeah. And the book gives some really great advice on how to do that.
Yeah. Practical tips.
Setting boundaries, asserting your needs.
Right.
Pursuing your passion.
Yeah. Finding what lights you up.
Surrounding yourself with positive.
Your tribe.
Your tribe, yeah.
The people who support you.
Who
believe in you.
Who
lift you up.
Yeah. It's about making choices that empower you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're in control of your life.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
So the book is really, really about that empowerment.
It is that personal
empowerment.
Yeah. Taking control of your life.
And creating the life you want. Not the life that society tells you should want.
Exactly. It's about that growth, both individually and as a couple.
Yeah.
And one thing that really stood out to me in this book is this whole exploration of what it calls the red pill hero's journey.
Yeah.
It's like it takes that classic hero's journey archetype.
Yeah.
That we see in all the myths and the stories.
Right.
Going back to ancient times.
It's a universal story.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful.
And it applies it to the red pill philosophy.
Yeah.
So, what's the connection there? How does that play out?
Well, it's about seeing the process of transformation that men go through when they embrace the red pill through the lens of that hero's journey.
Okay.
And it starts with the red pill awakening, right? That moment of realization where you suddenly see the world in a new way.
It's like Neo in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Taking that red pill and seeing reality for what it is.
And realizing that everything you thought you knew was a lie.
Right. And then the book talks about this descent into the underworld.
Yes.
The shadow self.
Yeah. What does that mean in this context?
Well, it's about confronting your own darkness. Your fears, your insecurities, the parts of yourself that you've been hiding from.
And also those harsh realities.
Yeah. The things about the world that you don't want to see.
Yeah.
But you have to face them if you want to grow.
Yeah. It's like facing those uncomfortable truths, both about yourself and about, society.
Absolutely.
Which is a crucial part of, any kind of growth.
It is. It's painful, but it's necessary.
Right.
It's like a crucible.
Yeah, it's like a trial by fire.
It is. You got to go through the fire to be purified.
Right. And then it talks about, the stage of tests and trial, meeting the mentor.
How does that play out in this red pill hero's journey?
Well, for someone embracing the red pill, those tests might be things like navigating the legal system, dealing with social pressure, maybe even facing rejection from loved ones.
So it's really putting, that commitment to the test.
Yeah, it's about seeing how strong you really are.
Okay. And the mentor, that could be anybody, right?
Yeah, it could be a therapist, a men's rights advocate, a wise friend, even a historical figure who embodies the values you admire.
Yeah, anybody who can offer guidance and support.
Exactly. Someone who's been there before, someone who can show you the way.
And then ultimately, the book culminates with this transformation, this rebirth.
Yes, the hero emerges from the darkness, transformed.
So, what does that look like? What would that look like for a guy on the red pill journey?
Well, it could mean building healthier relationships, achieving greater success in his career, or just feeling more confident and fulfilled in his life overall.
So it's like a journey of self-discovery,
It is. It's about becoming the best version of yourself.
Yeah, and really kind of stepping into that power, right?
Exactly. And realizing that you have the power to create the life you want.
Okay. One thing that I think really resonated with me is this whole idea of the warrior spirit.
Yeah.
That the book talks about.
It's like a powerful archetype.
Yeah, and to me it's about reclaiming those traditional masculine virtues
Right.
that have kind of been, lost or suppressed in modern society.
Absolutely. We've been told to be ashamed of our masculinity, but it's time to reclaim it, to embrace it.
So it's about, strength, courage, leadership, effectiveness, all those qualities.
The qualities that make men men.
Right, but not in a way that's about aggression or domination.
No, it's about using those qualities for good.
Right.
For self-mastery. For creating a better world.
So it's not about being a tough guy.
No.
It's about being a good man.
Right.
A man of honor.
A man of honor. A man who who stands up for what he believes in,
Yes.
and uses his strength, to protect and provide.
To make a difference.
To make a difference. Yeah. And the book, uses this phrase, let the iron be your redemption, your salvation, and your path to enlightenment.
I love that quote.
It's a great quote, right?
It's so powerful.
And it's like this call to embrace, physical fitness.
Yeah.
As a form of self-improvement.
Absolutely. The iron is a metaphor for discipline.
Yeah.
For pushing yourself beyond your limits.
And for connecting with that warrior spirit.
Exactly.
So it's about challenging yourself physically.
Yes.
Building your body.
Building your mind.
Building your mind. Yeah. And cultivating, that mental toughness that comes with it.
It's all connected.
Right.
Body, the mind, the spirit.
But it doesn't just focus on, physical strength. It also talks a lot about mental fortitude.
Like developing that fortress
Yeah.
of the mind.
Because you can be physically strong, but if you're mentally weak, you're not going to get very far.
Right. So it talks about, managing.
Especially anger.
Yeah.
Because anger is a powerful force,
Yeah.
but it can also be destructive.
It can be very destructive if it's, not.
Exact. So the book talks about how to channel that anger, how to use it as fuel to achieve your goal.
Okay. And it also talks a lot about discipline.
Yeah. Discipline is key.
Self-control.
It's about mastering yourself.
Okay.
Your thoughts, your emotions, your actions.
And having that, that focus to stay on track,
Staying on track even when things get tough.
Even when things get tough.
Because they will get tough.
They will get tough, yeah. And a lot of this, I think, comes down to mindset.
It does.
And the book talks about this this idea of an abundance mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Which sounds really, really powerful.
It is. It's a game changer.
Okay, so what does that mean? Like, what is an abundance mindset?
Well, it's about believing that there's enough for everyone.
Okay.
Enough success, enough happiness, enough love.
Okay.
It's about seeing the world as a place of opportunity, not scarcity.
So it's about, shifting your perspective from lack to having enough.
Exactly. And it's about believing in your own potential.
Okay.
Knowing that you have the power to create the life you want.
So it's really about, kind of like taking ownership of your life.
Yeah. Owning your power, your
Yeah.
agency, your destiny.
And recognizing that you have the ability to achieve those goals, whatever they may be.
Absolutely. And to overcome any obstacle that stands in your way.
We've talked a lot about marriage.
Yeah.
And obviously this is a book that's geared towards, men's rights activists.
Right.
But a lot of these guys are married.
Most of them, I'd say.
And so the book acknowledges that embracing the red pill can sometimes create tension within a marriage.
Yeah. It's not always easy.
Right. It'd be a bit of a bumpy road, especially if, one partner is more red-pilled than the other.
Yeah. You're going to have different perspectives, different understandings of the world.
Right.
And that can lead to conflict.
Right. So it's recognizing that you're going to have those disagreements. You're going to have those differences in perspective and understanding.
And that's okay.
It's about how you handle those differences.
Okay.
Do you communicate effectively? Do you listen to each other? Are you willing to compromise?
So the book is encouraging, couples to approach those differences with that open communication.
Absolutely. Open communication is key in any relationship.
Empathy.
Yeah.
Willingness to compromise.
Meet in the middle.
Yeah.
To meet in the middle. Yeah. But the book also suggests that the red pill can actually provide some really valuable tools for creating a stronger marriage.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It can give you insights into yourself, into your partner, into the dynamics of your relationship.
Right. So it's not just about, like being right or winning an argument. It's about understanding each other.
Understanding each other. And using that understanding to build a stronger bond.
And one of the things it talks about is men being more assertive.
Yeah.
Right. In communicating their needs and setting boundaries.
Absolutely. Because a lot of men have been taught to suppress their needs.
Right.
To put everyone else first.
Right.
And that's not healthy. It leads to resentment.
Resentment, yeah. And the book is saying, it's okay to have those needs.
It's more than okay. It's essential.
Yeah.
And it's okay to communicate them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not about being, domineering or controlling.
No, it's about being clear about what you want and what you need.
Yeah. And standing up for yourself when those needs aren't being met.
Exactly. And that can actually lead to a more balanced and respectful relationship.
Okay.
Because when both partners feel heard and respected, that's when the relationship really thrives.
So it's finding that balance. Right. Between being true to yourself and the principles of the red pill.
Right.
But also nurturing that relationship.
Absolutely. It's not an either situation. It's about finding a way to integrate both.
We've covered a lot of ground today. From the red pill awakening to the feminist agenda to the whole concept of the red pill hero's journey.
It's a lot to unpack.
It's a lot to unpack. Yeah. But this book, Sooth and Sermons for Men's Rights Activists, it really does seem like a comprehensive guide.
Yes.
For men who are looking to understand these challenges,
Yes.
that they face, and who are ready to take control of their lives.
It's a call to action.
It is a call to action.
Yeah.
And really kind of, step into that power.
Absolutely.
Become the best version of themselves.
That's what it's all about.
So if you're interested in learning more about these ideas, definitely check out the book, Sooth and Sermons for Men's Rights Activists. You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
It's a great resource for any man who's on the red pill journey.
It is. And remember, this is a journey. It's not a destination.
It's a lifelong process.
Yeah. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting with other men, who understand these challenges.
Yeah. Find your tribe.
Find your tribe, who get it.
The brotherhood is essential.
Yeah, it's essential.
You're not alone in this.
You're not alone.
There are millions of men out there who are waking up.
And who are ready to make a change.
To create a better world.
Until next time, keep diving deep.